No, we got a bunch of people signed on right now, so I think we should give it a go, give it a start. And they can kind of catch up with you at your presentation. So I was going to announce for everyone in the beginning that yes, you are on mute, just to let you know this is just going to be a webinar presentation. Thank you for signing on. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A. Barbara is going to try to answer the questions live as best as she can. Some questions may be towards the end, and if she doesn't get to your question, I'm going to print it out for everyone, and she can definitely reach out to you afterwards. Since I have you all here, again, thank you so much for joining the first PHCC webinar. Very much appreciate the support and logging on. If you don't know, we have a virtual food drive I wanted to make everyone aware of. So far, we have raised $1,400 for Long Island Harvest. It's a great organization and our community needs it more than ever right now. Our goal is $2,500. If you want to donate, you can go to the PHCC homepage. Right at the home screen, the banner is right up top. You just click on it and it'll bring you to the website. So that's super easy and much appreciated. Today we have an awesome presentation from Barbara. Barbara is going to be talking about, getting back to work, a topic that I'm sure is on everyone's brain right now, and especially seeing as some things are reopening throughout the state. So we have a great presentation. If you have any questions, again, use the Q&A for Barbara. If you have any questions for me, you can use the chat. If you're having any difficulties, just let me know. But again, hopefully you guys all appreciate and enjoy Barbara's presentation. I'm going to log off, so you're not going to see me anymore. I'm going to be listening, and the floor is all yours, Barbara. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Allison, and hello, everyone. And most importantly, I am hoping that all of you and your families have been healthy and safe, and that extends also to all of your employees. This is such an unprecedented time. I know everyone uses that word, but as we talk about the different things that are happening and getting back to work, we've never been here before, and we're all trying to figure it out as we're going along. And that's why the rules and the laws and the interpretations have changed practically on a daily basis, because it's all new to us. It's something that's completely new. So what I'd like to take you to is I have an agenda where we're going to talk about various topics. And Allison, thank you for opening up the chat. It's a better way for us to manage your questions. So this way we're not talking over one another, and hopefully we'll be able to see one another in person. After each of my topics, I'd like to stop and ask who has questions about that particular topic. This way we can help you address what's happening in real time. And again, if we don't get to everything, send me your questions, put them in the chat, and I'll look to get back to you as quickly as I can. So let's start. Let's start with thinking about, what happened 3 months ago. Okay, so right now it is May, June, oh my goodness. Who would have ever thought back 3 months ago that we would be where we are today? I frankly know I didn't. But who's thinking about where we're going to be 3 months from now, in September, and then further into the future? And I'm going to bet that we're all thinking about the economy, about jobs, about health, about medical benefits, about seeing friends and family, about celebrations and travel and vacations. And we need to think about tomorrow to prepare us for a reopening of business and to continue our work as essential businesses. So communicating and documenting is my theme for today. There's so much to talk about, and I want to focus on 5 potential claims that we want to avoid or be prepared to defend. Then I want to talk a little bit about unemployment, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission compliance, and communication. And I'm sharing these with you because these are the most commonly asked questions and issues that we are talking about with our clients, and I'm betting that you have the same questions and issues as you're opening. So as the pandemic opens and continues, we need to continue to think about potential claims and lawsuits that we need to be prepared for and how we can insulate ourselves from liability. So the first place that I want to go is, oh my goodness, I have the wrong presentation here. Oh my God, I just realized that. Hold on a second. Hold on, how do I stop share? We are not in the right place. Shame on me. Shame on me. Give me a quick second here. Now you can see all of my secret stuff, right? And I clicked on just the wrong thing this afternoon, and just give me a quick second here. And of course, when you're looking for something, you can never find it, right? Allison, and you and I practice for this too. Here we go, here we go, here it is, here it is, and here it should be. Here we are. Now I feel much better, and I'm going to go back in and I'm going to share my screen. And I am sharing my screen, and I'm coming here. So this way we are, there we are. So here are the topics we're going to talk about. What are the lawsuits and claims to avoid? How to limit liability in the event of a claim. Responding to and making accommodations. Ensuring a safe workplace. Handling unemployment. Handling the phases of reopening New York, and implementing your communication strategy. So the first thing that I want to chat through are wage and hour claims. You know, we need to be concerned about potential wage and hour claims under the Fair Labor Standards Act. In very many of our meetings, we have talked about making sure that employees are correctly designated as exempt or non-exempt. Are they salaried or hourly? And that's just not because how we're deciding to pay them, it's based upon their job responsibilities. You know, many of us recently have had employees who are working remotely, and we also have employees who are working on site. Those employees who are designated as hourly non-exempt employees are to be submitting weekly contemporaneously prepared timesheets, which includes at least a 30-minute meal break. So we're required to give a 30-minute meal break. We know this when we're in the office, and we have to make sure, especially when people are working remotely, that they're still taking this break. Doing this once a week as an automatic reflex also looks like a work schedule, which is not going to help, and that's useless. And the reason why we want to do this is that we don't want employees coming back to work and saying, oh, I worked through my meals and I was never paid for it. That can be a concern, and that's an easy wage and hour claim. And if we don't have our documentation behind it to back up that they took their meal period, we can be responsible to give them back pay for that period of time. Then it's going to be their word against ours, and you know the way that it works. If our documentation is not there, the employee is going to win. Now, this meal break can be paid or unpaid according to your policy, but that's got to be consistently applied to everybody. It's not an option. When employees work 6 consecutive hours, it's required by New York State law. So when the employee says that they're working through their lunch, the time has to be counted as hours worked. This is not a gift. So to limit an unpaid wage claim, schedule the meal period, notify employees that they are not to work during that time, monitor their emails, and access to your company files during this meal break. If you see them working during it, it has to be paid time. Be careful about accepting that, quote, loyal employee who is just helping out to get their stuff done. Work time has to be paid for. We're betting that there's going to be an increase in claims on wage and hour issues. Now, another issue for non-exempt employees is that very many of us use our personal devices to accomplish work. So many of us are expected to be on at all times. And for non-exempt employees, this means this is work time and it has to be paid. We answer emails during our commute or while we're having breakfast. We take phone calls before and after our stated hours. Bosses are going to connect with employees over the weekend. So just as we spend time on company computers and phones, we need to count the time spent using personal devices, because this is considered to be work time. It has to be tracked and it has to be paid for. If there is a wage claim, the judge is going to ask the employee about the time spent performing work. And if there's no documentation from the employer, to the contrary, the employee is going to be believed, and the employee is going to get back pay, and the company is going to be fined. So please communicate your policy. Document what you communicated to employees. Document the actual hours that are worked, because keep in mind, that's when an employee's work hours are past 40 hours in 1 week, the employee has to be paid overtime at the rate of time and a half. Now, I know you all know that. And I know that we've been taking, we may be generous with some people in terms of how we're paying them when they're working remotely or when they're in the office. But make sure you're paying for all of the hours worked. Now, another wage and hour claim can arise from the different kinds of work that employees are now performing while they're working remotely or in the workplace. I mean, this has been going on for 3 months. It's not a 3-day deal. The pandemic has changed how work is being done and the kind of work that's being done. So the exempt of somebody who's been defined as exempt and salaried may have changed to an employee's work being defined as non-exempt. And that employee should now be paid at an hourly rate with overtime for hours worked over 40 hours in a week. And if this is changed, it could be for many different reasons. It could be the supervisor who no longer has employees to supervise because they're doing the work because business is down. It could be the salesperson who's now following up with customers instead of being on the road and actually selling. It could be the accounting staff whose role is a lot more critical now because the tasks are much more rote and not requiring the exercise of independent discretion and judgment. So this requires us to be very clear about responsibilities. It requires us to be clear about employees tracking the hours worked. And it's very important that employees are getting pre-approval for working through their meal periods and overtime. If the employee does not get a pre-approval for working those additional hours, you still have to pay it. And then you can handle that through a disciplinary conversation. But just continue to reinforce that they have to get pre-approval for any of that overtime work. Now, in New York, we all know that there are wage forms that have to be provided to employees on day 1 of employment. You've all seen these. We've talked about this in all of our meetings. These are the forms that are predominantly the LS-54 or LS-59 forms, where on the left-hand side it talks about the organization and company information, and in the middle it talks about the wage, the overtime rate, and then the individual signs it as well as the employer, and the employee is supposed to get a copy of that on day 1 of employment. Now, these wage forms have to be specific to the exempt or non-exempt status of a job, and it states the overtime rate along with the hourly rate. When there is a change in an exempt or non-exempt status, a new wage form has to be given to the employee. When there is a decrease in salary or an hourly rate because employees may be sharing in the financial pain of a slowdown in business, a new wage form has to be given to the employee. When and if the exempt or non-exempt status changes again back in the future, or the salary or hourly rate changes again, a new wage form has to be given to the employee. And it's way too easy for an employee to contact the New York State Department of Labor and say, my company is not giving me these forms, and not only will you be fined on a per day basis based upon the number of employees you have, but there are substantial bonuses that the New York State Department of Labor gives to that employee for filing that complaint if it's substantiated. So please make sure that we're avoiding these finder's fees. Make sure you're communicating any change in status and make sure you have that. Now, what I'd like to do is to stop here, and I'd like to ask you who has questions on this topic, because if we were live, we would be able to see that. Let's see if we've got questions here. I'm looking at the chat. Okay, so far it looks like we're pretty good. So let me share again, and we're going to get back to where we were. All right, now let's talk about leave law. So there are very many employees who are taking leave during these past 3 months, and there can very easily be leave law claims. Those of us who have 50 or more employees within a 75-mile radius before COVID and outside of COVID are required to provide federal family and medical leave protection, which provides job protection and health insurance for 12 weeks. This has been in place since 1993. And this requires employers to open communication with the employee and provide supporting documentation within 15 days of the person's need to be out, or the notification to be out, or the first day that we know that they are out. This runs concurrently with New York State disability and workers' compensation. It's never the employee's decision to go on family medical leave or not. It's the employer's responsibility to initiate the discussion and provide the paperwork and start the FMLA clock. So 50 or more employees within a 75-mile radius. Now let's talk about the pandemic, because now there are leave laws under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, FFCRA. I'm going to call it FCRA. Now, this includes emergency paid sick leave and emergency family and medical leave expansion. So the first requirement is to distribute the FCRA poster to all of your employees who are working on site, who are working remotely, or who are on furlough. If you don't have this, send me a request. I'll get this over to you. If you have not already posted it, post it now. And write a date down as to the date that you started posting and communicating information about COVID benefits. This poster is also available on the U.S. Department of Labor website and can be easily found by Googling FFCRA poster. And it's also on our PMP website under the resources tab. Now, employees who are requesting leave should do so with a form. And PMP has developed a FCRA request form in which the employee is attesting to the reason for the leave, and where appropriate, they're providing documentation from either a healthcare provider or from a child care facility. And this should be approved in writing. Don't just do this carte blanche, because by you providing benefits under FCRA or the EPSL or the Emergency Family Medical Leave and Expansion Act, you're going to provide these monetary benefits. They are reimbursed to you through tax credits, but you're only going to get the tax credits if you've got the documentation behind it. So a verbal conversation is not going to work, and a simple email is not going to work. You really need to pull your information together. Think about if you're going into an audit from the IRS. They're looking for a lot of details, right? This is the same line of that, and actually the IRS has been part of coming up with the requirements for the documentation. So the FCRA paid benefits are going to apply for specific periods of time, and it's going to provide specific monetary benefits to the employee if they are, number one, home because the child is home from school and there's no daycare available. And I'm going to share with you that Governor Cuomo just announced that daycare can open on June 29th. So if you have employees who have been out for taking care of their children because school has been closed and there has been no daycare, daycare can, and camps, day camps can open up on June 29th. So June 30th, all these employees can come back to work. The second reason why an individual can be out is because they are quarantined because they have COVID. Okay, that's mandatory isolation. The third reason is an employee is caring for someone with COVID and they can't work. And this assumes that if I'm caring for someone, I would be exposed to that person and I have to quarantine. I have to provide a doctor's, I have to provide an order of quarantine or the doctor's note for myself or for my family member. The other reason why a person can be out is because I'm under precautionary order of quarantine from a healthcare provider and I cannot work, or I have symptoms and I'm seeking a medical diagnosis. So there are very specific reasons why a person can be out and get the financial benefits under these leave laws. Simply because I don't feel like coming to work and I'd rather work remotely doesn't cut it. And we can talk about that. So notice of all of these benefits should be in writing. We recommend that specific communication be provided in a letter or a form letter outlining the timing of, the timeframes, and the monetary benefits. It should explain expected return to work dates and any requirements for return to work notices from a healthcare provider. When employees are out to care for a child whose school is closed and the daycare is not available, and the employer has those 50 or more employees within a 75-mile radius that we talked about before, the employee should be given an FMLA designation as well. Because under the FCRA benefits, employees were able to be out to take care of their child for a period of no longer than 12 weeks. Since it's under the Family and Medical Leave Act, it doesn't give a person an additional 12 weeks. It's a total within a year's period of time. So there's a lot of communication and a lot of documentation. Any questions? Allison, you're seeing it instead of me flipping back and forth. Are there any questions I can answer on leave law?
Yep, we have one question.
Can you read it to me? Would you mind?
Yeah, of course. From Deb O'Reilly. So my employee had hours reduced to 16 hours. We need a new L54.
If the number of hours were reduced, no. But if my hourly rate was reduced, yes.
All right, perfect. Yep, that's the only question we have for right now. Anyone else? Type them in now.
Okay, we can come back to them.
Yep.
Now let's start talking about layoffs. Now, once business reopens and New York is beginning to reopen, the questions that we are getting from our clients are all about, I don't know if I can bring back 100% of my staff, because business is not where it was prior to 3 months ago. So there's a reality that some individuals who have been on furlough or who have been working remotely or who have been working on site may actually be laid off. Now, employees are always going to ask, why me? And we have to have a documented, justifiable business reason for the decisions that are made. These decisions should never be made lightly. And we're suggesting that the data always be reviewed by a seasoned HR professional and an employment attorney. We want to make sure there is no adverse impact on a particular protected group and that one group of employees is not more severely affected than others. For example, do the decisions affect all women, or only or mostly those over 40 years of age? Or does it include those who are pregnant? Does it really only include those earning the highest salaries because that's where we want to save the most money? Is it of those of a particular color or religion or any other protected status? I am not insinuating that you are making conscious discriminatory decisions, but looking at the whole data may show you that we're adversely impacting a certain group. So documentation of your objective decision is going to go a very long way in defending a claim of discrimination and can answer the why me question. When this analysis has been completed and the decision is made, be very careful about making those last minute changes to the list, because more often than not, those last minute decisions affect an individual in a protected group, and it's going to lay the groundwork for a discrimination claim. So please communicate amongst the management team, evaluate and document your data, and preserve that information because you're going to need that down the road. Hopefully you won't, but you might. Now, employers also have to keep in mind that if the numbers are large enough, they have to be aware of your federal and state WARN obligations. So based upon the size, if you're going to have a large layoff, please talk to us, talk to another HR professional, talk to us at Silverman Acampora, talk to any employment attorney about your obligations under WARN. The notices for WARN, the state, New York State has said, look, we're not going to require you to do it within a short period of time, but you still have to do it. So make sure that you're meeting that obligation. Any questions that are coming from that, Allison? All right, let me continue.
We're good.
Okay, let's talk about accommodations. Another area of potential accommodations are those employees who are requesting an accommodation to continue to work remotely. If the reason is just because they no longer want to commute, or because it's just easier to work from home, or they have a fear of commuting and being in the workplace, employers can reaffirm the need to work on site and say, if you refuse, it's going to be considered a job resignation or a job abandonment. At that time, these employees will likely not be eligible for unemployment. So we've got many employees who are saying, I'm just fearful about commuting, I'm fearful about being back in the city, I'm fearful about being around people. And unless there's a healthcare reason or a reason that falls under the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is documented, we say to that employee, well, I know working remotely has been a convenience for you for a couple of months, but we're making a decision that we want everybody back in the office. That's the job. If you're not interested in that, then I have no other job for you. And then it would be considered a resignation or an abandonment of job, and that will affect unemployment. Now, we're hearing about employees who are asking to work from home. They don't feel that it's necessary to work in the work site. We've got some employers who are really thinking about revamping the workplace and having people work more remotely. If you're going to do it, make it a schedule. Put it on a calendar and make sure that everyone knows what the expectations are. And when that individual is working remotely, make sure you are being very clear about the job description, about the job expectations that should be measurable and reportable. Because otherwise, I'm hearing from many employers, well, no, my employees really aren't working to 100% capacity. And that causes a problem because we have work to do. So some employees also have childcare issues and they need accommodations as well. So when school is closed or daycare is not available, we need to be accommodating. Now remember the June 29th deadline, which is something that is brand new. So in order to be accommodating, listen to the employee. Even if daycare starts opening up on June 29th, and in the first week they're concerned about their child and they need to go and pick them up at 3 o'clock. If you can be accommodating, do it and document that you've been accommodating. You are not required to bend over backwards because the job is still 9 to 5, 8 to 5 with whatever period of time for meal break and whatever the schedule is. But just make sure that if you are going to be accommodating and or the employee is asking you for something, have what we call a, quote, interactive dialogue, which is required by the law, and that you're documenting what you've talked about and what the resolution is. So if and when it's going to be possible to allow work for remote work, establish clear parameters around it. Now, when an employee explains that request to work remotely is a request for an accommodation because of a disability, for an ADA reason or a pregnancy reason, okay, make sure that interactive dialogue is happening and make sure that the employee can perform the essential functions of the job with or without an accommodation. If you require a note from a healthcare provider, do it to support that request and ask for it. And unless there's a real undue hardship to the employer, in many cases, the accommodation is going to have to be made. But please make sure this is all well documented, because this is the documentation that's going to be used in the employer's defense in the event of a claim. So that, quote, interactive dialogue is the communication, and it has to be supported with thorough documentation, no question. All right, do we have any questions about accommodations?
Not at this time, we don't.
Terrific. All right, let's start talking about a safe workplace. I know that all of you are focused on and have always been focused on a safe workplace, and a safe workplace because is critical because we don't want anybody getting hurt, intentionally or unintentionally, right? And we know we've got a bunch of laws and rules all around that. Well, returning to work is turning into something that's different. It's already resulted in claims that are filed with OSHA. Now, OSHA's general duty clause requires a safe workplace, but now it's interpreted additionally as a little differently, because ultimately they're saying that each employer is required to furnish to each employee a place of employment free from recognized hazards that are causing or likely to cause death or serious physical harm to employees. And there are lots of employees who are saying, if I'm exposed, I can get COVID and I can die. Let's hope that never happens. Workers' compensation claims are also on the rise because employees who get sick can easily claim that they got the virus in work. And the challenge is how to prove this. The first lawsuit has already been filed against Walmart, and this was weeks ago in the beginning of COVID back in March. An employee's family claims that he contacted COVID on the job and he died. They claim that Walmart knew that an employee had the virus and they did nothing about it. So it is really important to continuously communicate information about how you are keeping the workplace safe. Communicate and document the actions that you're taking with respect to posting and distributing information from the CDC. Actions you're taking to close a department or the organization for a deep cleaning because of a positive COVID case. How you mandate and maintain social distancing, what PPE you are providing, and all the additional proactive steps that you're taking. We strongly suggest that if you have not already started to do so in the beginning of March or in March when we close down, go back in your history or start now and maintain a log, an ongoing log of every action that you have taken. You posted this poster, you sent out this email, you sent this information with a pay stub. Who you sent that information to? Was it existing employees working on site? Was it people working remotely? And/or was it people who were on furlough? Retain copies of the materials that are communicated. Keep records of any video communications that you use. This is going to go a long way in the event that you have to document your claims. Otherwise, the employee is going to say, my employer did nothing about it. And we say, no, we did a lot of things, but we don't have a list of that. So, you know, our message from PMP has always been document, document, document. This is what is going to help us down the road because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the claims are going to be. And the only thing that we can start to think about is how can we potentially protect ourselves? That's why that log is really important. Okay, now those are the 5 potential claims and lawsuits that we are anticipating. Any questions before we start talking about unemployment?
Nope, we don't have any questions.
Okay. Unemployment. Wow. Who would have ever have imagined where we are in this country? You know, I looked at numbers a couple of weeks ago when it was posted. Over 1.6 million New Yorkers have filed, and there's over $7 million in benefits that's been out there. So in order to connect, let's go through the basics of unemployment. In order for an employee or an individual to collect New York unemployment benefits, a claimant must have 1, enough previous employment to establish a base period. Number 2, have lost employment through no fault of their own. Number 3, be ready, willing, and able to work. And number 4, be actively seeking work. So those claimants who lose their jobs as part of a temporary furlough are eligible for unemployment. Now, when you think about the PUA benefit, it's based upon recent wages. So a recipient is going to get 50% of the average weekly benefit amount in the state the claimant is filing for benefits. So in New York right now, for the period April 1st through June 30th, the minimum rate is $182. Now, as long as an employee is receiving $1 in these PUA benefits, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance benefits, they are eligible to receive the federal benefit of an additional $600 a week. That benefit ends on July 31st. So there are deadlines by which these benefits are going to end. I bet because no one thought that we would be in this pandemic for longer than 4 months. So July 31st right now is the cutoff for that $600. Now, a claimant is going to be ineligible for benefits. They're not going to be eligible for benefits if they work 4 or more days per week and they earn $504 or more per week. So for each day or part of a day that the claimant works, the weekly benefit drops by 25%. The exception to the rule is if the claimant is working part-time and part of a shared work program, which is a whole other discussion. So we also need to think about now that, you know, how else and why else is an individual eligible for unemployment benefits? You know, we say, I've got work for you. The employee says, no, I want to work from home. Well, that doesn't quite work, and they may not be eligible for unemployment. But they could be eligible for unemployment if they're out for the reasons that we talked about before. Remember that they have the symptoms, they're taking care of one of their family members, they need to take care of a child. And if they've exhausted the FCRA benefits, the monetary benefits we talked about earlier, they may be eligible for unemployment. It states it in the unemployment rules. So if they are, for example, unable to reach the place of employment because of the quarantine, if they're unable to reach their place of employment because they're advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine because of concerns. Some of these cases have come up where an individual says, I've got a really compromised immune system, and the doctor is saying, I can't have you out there in the public. That may be eligible for unemployment. Let's say that individual became the breadwinner or the major support for a household because the head of the household may have passed away from COVID. Maybe they had to quit their job as a result of COVID. Maybe the place of employment closed due to COVID. So there's a lot of information out there and misinformation about unemployment. Our best guidance to you is that you are not, neither are we, the unemployment office. If the individual wants to file, let them file. Let unemployment decide whether or not they're going to get benefits. Okay? Now let's just finish this conversation and talk about people who have been on furlough. Now we know that this $600 benefit has in many cases given employees a much greater financial benefit than their regular wages. We said before that these generous federal unemployment benefits are expected to end on July 31st. As employers are opening businesses and essential businesses are bringing more people back to work, employees still keep saying they would rather continue to receive the generous unemployment benefits and not return to work. Sorry, but that doesn't work. When there's a job offer and the employee refuses to return to work, it's handled similarly to an individual quitting their job. Because the work is available, the burden of proof is on the employer to prove that the job was available. So when you're going to make these offers verbally, that's great. But I'm suggesting that you confirm it in writing, just like an offer letter, and put in the details and say, we are reoffering, we are reopening, we are expecting you to come back to work in this title on such and such date at this compensation. And if the employee does not return to work or notifies you the day before that they're not coming back because they want the $600 benefit, then tell them that you're going to notify unemployment and they may lose their unemployment benefits. So when that employee is not returning to work, send that employee a termination letter and a record of unemployment, both of which are required by New York State law. So first, we're going to send the offer letter to say, we're getting you your job back. The employee verbally says, I'm not coming back, or they don't reply. Send them a termination letter which says, we offered you a position of X to return to work on X date at this rate. Either we have not heard from you, either you told us that you're not returning to work, either you ignored us and we don't know what's going on, and we're considering that you either abandoned your job or you have resigned. Here's a record of unemployment, which is required. Now, it kind of seems a little odd to give it to them since they've been on it, but you're required to send it, so send it anyhow. And now your documentation is nice and clear that you've provided that information. Now, if you discover a wage discrepancy or a disqualifying piece of information, the way that you can notify unemployment is through a form that's called Form LO400 within 10 days of the notice. Usually this is provided to you when an employee signs up for benefits. But what we're seeing is that there's so many claims out there that it's taking up to 2 months for the employer to get notice that an employee filed for benefits. And that's a problem, especially if the employee has been getting some FCRA benefits. Now, the work-share program is something that's different than offered by New York State. It's a whole different conversation. And my suggestion is to contact New York State Unemployment Office verbally to call them. They have been very helpful in providing information, and it's much easier to get on those lines with somebody than it is to file a claim. Now, if vacation and holidays are paid out as a result of a layoff or a furlough and the vacation was not scheduled in advance, it will have no impact on unemployment benefits. So very often we get this question. If the claimant is actively receiving vacation pay for vacation time that was scheduled prior to the last day of employment, it will make the claimant ineligible for benefits. So there are some details about vacation time and unemployment and what the individual is available for, is eligible for. So we're hearing the same things that you are. Look, I want to stay home, or can I get these benefits? Well, that's fine, but that great benefit is going to end on July 31st. And if you offer a job, that individual may no longer be eligible for it. Any questions on this topic?
We do. So Pat asked, so if an employee goes back to work for one day, the unemployment is reduced by 25%. What if the employee makes more than a quarter of the $504 in that one day? The employee makes $300 in one day?
I'm going to be honest with you. I can't do the math with you because that's the unemployment math. I'm not even going to try it because I know that I'm going to get it wrong. The question that, and I'm sorry for that, Pat. I'm going to answer another question that we very often get. Let's say, for example, an employee has been on furlough and they've been enjoying the unemployment benefits. And we need that individual to come back one day a week. How will that affect their unemployment benefits? Will it be zeroed out, or will they still be eligible for it? They will still be eligible for unemployment based upon a prorated rate of the number of days that they came back to work. So Pat, I'm sorry I wasn't able to be very specific about the numbers and the calculations, but I really tread lightly going there.
That is all for questions.
Okay. All right, let's talk about EEOC compliance. Now, under EEOC compliance, this pandemic is not permission to avoid the conversation about continuing to be compliant with federal and state equal employment opportunity and sexual harassment laws. It's even more important in these times. So please make sure your sexual harassment policy is current and it reflects the rule that effective August 12th of 2020, the statute of limitations to file a claim of sexual harassment with the New York State Division of Human Rights has been extended from 1 to 3 years. So when the policies first came out, and we even wrote them with our clients, we were not aware of this change. So we said that people had 1 year to file a claim. Your policy has to say the statement that effective August 12th of 2020, they now will have 3 years in order to file that claim. So this is also a time to redistribute your EEO and sexual harassment policies. And just because employees are not in the work site, it doesn't mean the harassment and discrimination can't occur. There has been a substantial recent rise in discrimination complaints against Asian Americans and against Asians because COVID came from Asia. We also expect a rise in sexual harassment claims because employees are working remotely and they feel in very many cases that they can be much more casual than they were in the office. I often hear in video meetings about, are you wearing pants today? I can't even tell you where I go with that conversation. We need to inform employees that showing up for a video call should be expected at any time of the day, and it's not appropriate attire to be in a bathrobe or underwear. And it's not appropriate to talk about what I'm wearing every day at work. I wear the same set of sweatpants. Guys, I haven't showered in X number of days. Am I wearing underwear? Well, let's see if I am or not. Those kinds of conversations, if they are continued to be permitted, whether it be in a video call, in emails, whether it be just on telephone calls, is completely inappropriate. Employees are increasingly using video in their day-to-day, and they think that it's fun to text videos of themselves while they're working. That's got to stop. It's got to be clear that sexual harassment and discrimination laws and policies apply in all forms of employee communication. This applies during work hours. It applies after work hours. It applies to lunch and learns, as well as Zoom happy hours with coworkers. So just because something is a Zoom call at 5 o'clock and we're having a happy hour and a cocktail still does not permit that individual to show up in the video with either they have it or don't, or announce whether or not they're wearing underwear. So please verbally communicate and maintain documentation about your communication to your staff, as well as what you did to address and respond to that complaint. Just because somebody's not on site doesn't mean you don't have to do anything about it. And employers have to remember that the obligation to deliver sexual harassment training has not been eliminated or postponed because of COVID. So take the time now and schedule it. Remember, we're supposed to do that once a year. Any questions on this topic?
Nope, as of right now, we're good.
Good. So now let's talk about reopening New York. I'm giving you this website because I'm strongly suggesting, if you have not already been here, that you need to take a look at this website. And very specifically, what you're going to see here is you're going to see the reopening phase, and you're going to see it by industry and by location. You've all heard this in Governor Cuomo's daily chats. The three things that I want you to look for in your industry, and the construction industry has already been posted for a while, is these three blue boxes. And I'm suggesting you look at these backwards. The first thing is that you are required to have a written and signed off business safety plan. The advantage and the gift that New York State has given us is they've given you a template, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. But there's a lot of information in this template that you need to look at, that you need to write down, you need to sign to it, and you need to post it in a conspicuous place in your workplace. So very many of you are going to post this near your other employment posters. How are you going to handle this with your field employees? Well, if your field employees come into the office and they're going to pass that location where that your posters typically are, that will suffice. If not, and employees are solely working remotely, you may want to let them know that the business safety plan that has been required by New York has been posted in the office, and they are welcome to come to the office and take a look at it. You're not required to send it out to everybody. It's quite a long document. The second thing I want you to look at is in the middle of this list. You need to read and affirm detailed guidelines which are specific to your industry. So when you're looking at and reading and affirming these detailed guidelines, the reason why I'm suggesting you have to read every word is because on the last page, there's the last two bullet points where you are saying, I am affirming that I'm going to pay attention to all these guidelines and follow them on an ongoing basis. You then have to access a link and affirm it electronically with the state of New York. So you're putting in your company name, contact information, and you are affirming that you read this document and you promise that you're going to maintain it. Now, why are we doing this? Why is New York State doing this? Well, first off, we're saying to employees, we're creating a nice and safe workplace. And New York State has provided us with the guidelines and we're paying attention to it. But please make sure that you are. I can't tell you how many employers that I'm hearing from where ownership is saying, yeah, okay, we haven't had an issue. I've been in the office, we've been essential, we've been on a limited staff. I haven't had any problems. We haven't worn a mask. We've been clean. Nobody's got an issue. Or I had it and I'm not going to get it again, so no one else will. So when everyone comes in, all right, we'll pay attention to the rules for a week or two, but now I'm not going to pay attention to them anymore. It is way too easy for any employee to either contact New York State, call the Attorney General, or go to any of the media, which we've already seen them do, and say, XYZ company is not wearing masks, everything is in a box, ownership is blowing this off, management is saying that this is a pain in the neck, and everything that they've read and affirmed to in the detailed guidelines and signed off on the safety plan template is a farce. I don't think you want that on the New York Post. Then not on the fourth page nor on the front page. So please think about that. The summary guidelines is the first on the list, but it's the last I'm talking about. It summarizes what needs to be done. And what it is that it's a nice little checklist. On the left, has two columns. On the left-hand side, it says what's mandatory, and then it talks about some good business practices. So New York State did a pretty darn good job of providing this to employers. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. But if you're going to commit to a safe workplace, because you never want your employees to get hurt, then commit to this and behave what you're saying that you're going to do. That's going to go a long way, not only with employee engagement with all of your employees, but your own reputation within the industry. Because we all know how long it takes for us to work on that and develop it, and how easily it can be for us to lose that, which I don't want to happen to any of you. So reopen New York. Please take this seriously. If you've got questions, please call me. Please make sure all along you are keeping that log and that documentation of every single piece of communication you're sending out, because that's going to help to defend you going forward. Now, one of the things in the summary guidelines and in the detailed guidelines is that it is requiring by New York State that every employee be subject to a questionnaire. And there are 3 questions that they have to answer every single day. So the 3 questions are along the lines of, do you have a fever? Have you been exposed to someone with COVID? Have you had COVID within the past 14 days? Okay, so the specific questions are within the summary guidelines. And many employers are saying, how am I going to do this? I got people who are working out in the field. I have people coming into the office. I may have 1 or 2 people on my staff, or I may have 100 or 200 people on my staff. How am I supposed to manage this? Well, there are different options that many people are thinking about. The first is to have 100% of people, 100%, which includes the CEO, it includes ownership. If you're going to apply the rules to one, got to apply it to everybody. If everybody's going to fill out this form on a daily basis, then fill out the form on a daily basis. And somebody has to look at the answers on that form very quickly. Because if somebody answers the fact that, have you been exposed within the past 14 days? And they say yes. Or do you have any symptoms of COVID? And they say yes. And we don't pay attention to it and we just let them come to work. We're opening ourselves up to a lot of liability and a lot of problems and a lot of exposure for a lot of people. So some employers are going to have employees sign that once when they come back into work. And then they're going to have a sign on the front door, which is basically that information and that questionnaire saying, I am affirming by walking through these doors that I'm answering no to all of these questions. And your way of tracking that is you're tracking your employees who came to work that day. So you're going to need to maintain a log of everyone who came in. All of your vendors and visitors are going to have to answer those questions every single day. Some employers are finding that there are apps that they can use in order to have employees fill this out and answer these questions just as they're arriving at work. Others are putting them on iPads as they're walking in the door, and maybe little kiosks. So there's different technology that is coming up that may be associated, that may make it a little bit easier. I've today heard about something on a phone system that an individual, if they get a message, that they are answering back and saying the answer is no to all of these questions, and that's documented. Another way to do it with individuals in the office is to have something pop up every single day as a questionnaire. Maybe it's an email that's pre-scheduled to everybody. You know, answer these questions and respond via email. So there are different ways to do it, but please make sure that you are paying attention to the detailed guidelines that you are committing to in writing. Any questions on that? Because that's a lot. There's a lot going on there.
Nope, right now we're good.
Okay. One of the things that people are also asking me is, am I required to take people's temperatures? No. And I don't mean to be flippant about it, but you're not required to do that. If you want to do it, you can. But if you do it for one, you have to do it for everybody. No one is exempt. Not even that company owner who's running into a meeting and is already late and has to wait online for 3 people in order to get their temperature taken. If you're doing it for one, you have to do it for all. Consistency is really important. All right, the last is I would like to talk about identifying a centralized communicator. And this is a strategy, because hoping that we're going to have the right documentation in the event that we need it, hoping that all of our employees are getting the same message, hoping that we are applying our rules consistently, hope is not a strategy. So we've been talking about communication, and I really hope that you have been taking my message to heart. We have to remember that when a manager or a company does not communicate facts and information with employees, employees are going to make up a story, and their stories are very often worse than the truth. These stories become gossip, and this becomes something that's difficult to manage and can easily get out of control. So please communicate a clear and consistent message. Now, let me summarize my thoughts and talk about a communication strategy, which involves designating one individual who is the go-to for all employee and management questions. One individual who's a centralized source of all COVID information and is keeping up on the rules and regulations. It's this one person who ensures that employees are being provided with the proper pay for their time out due to COVID reasons. This individual is the source of all employee communication and makes sure that the message is consistent, and then ensures that the actions taken reflect the message that's communicated. This individual should proactively reach out to managers just simply to connect and say, what are your challenges? What are the problems? Listen to their concerns and their own fears, as well as what are the concerns and fears of the staff. And then follow up. Develop a strategy, develop a plan, and follow up. This individual's responsibility is to maintain consistency of the message and the actions taken across the organization. This individual should be prepared to be consistent with responding to requests to continue to work remotely because of health or safety concerns, or requests to continue to be furloughed because the employee is making out financially better on unemployment. This individual ensures that that, quote, interactive dialogue occurs with those who request an accommodation to their work or how their work is done. The decision or accommodation made has to be consistent with other requests. Then the decision is communicated and documented. You know, when we're reopening when we are announcing the reopening of our business and a return to work strategy, it has to be communicated. Do it in a video call. Support the message with a memo attached to paychecks. Include details about return to work dates, work schedules, how the workplace is going to be sanitized. Reiterate that employees are not to report to work if they don't feel well or if they've been exposed to a COVID situation. Communicate that they're going to be required to fill out this questionnaire, or as they're walking through the door, they are affirming that they are answering that questionnaire. Overall, this individual is to maintain that daily comprehensive log of all requests and actions taken or not, and that supporting documentation should be maintained as well. So in summary, this is your centralized, consistent, and ongoing centralized message. It can limit liability in the event of a claim, and it can enhance and improve employee engagement when employees know that they are being treated fairly and they are being heard fully. So communicate and document and do it well. So I just hope that this has been helpful and eye-opening about how proactive we all need to be. It's all about business. It's all about keeping our employees safe. And you have all to do with that. I am open for any questions.
We have one question from Deb O'Reilly. She said, do we have to go back to the beginning of the pandemic and document the people that come to work? She's referring to 3 people of those questions and move forward from there.
No, you don't have to go back in time, but I would start it today because the requirements of the questionnaire came up with the reopening phases of New York. So if you already had employees continuously working, I would get that questionnaire and have them do it tomorrow. That's when you became aware of it. That's when you affirmed to it. That's when you developed your safety plan, and that's perfectly appropriate.
Does anyone else have any more questions for Barbara? You can put them in the Q&A. Thank you, Deb. All right, I think if anyone else doesn't have any more questions, I think we are all set.
I hope this has been informative. I really encourage you, communicate and behave your communication. Very often we have said in the past that outside of us being in the field and potentially subject to something in the construction world which can hurt our employees, that we're not in a life and death situation. We are today. And I don't take this lightly, and neither do a lot of people. So listen, communicate, make them comfortable. It's all about you maintaining your business and maintaining your staff. Thanks for the opportunity to talk with you.
All right, perfect. I think that's it for us. Thank you so much for attending, and thank you, Barbara, for that. That was an amazing presentation. All right, hope to see everyone soon. All right, everyone take care.
Be safe.
Bye, Barbara. Bye, everyone.